You know, this whole show is about a feel-good story called the striper bass and how well it's being
brought back.
Exactly.
Thing, right?
It's just everybody's pitching in.
Exactly.
Governments
working together
at all levels, from federal to provincial to municipal, local entrepreneurs and store owners and shops. Everybody is behind it.
That's the way it works, right?
That's the way it works because they see the value.
Right.
They see the value of doing it
That's
right. And I only say that because our next guest might have the flip side of that coin. His name is Scott Nelson. He's the chairman with the Lake Nipissing Stakeholders Association. And things are not quite as rosy there right now. For the past few years, there have been all kinds of reports of walleye fishery mismanagement and all kinds of things going on Lake Nipissing. And it's totally opposite of what we're experiencing here in New Brunswick today.
He needs this to happen there.
That's right. So let's bring Scott on and see if he can shed some light on it. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Angelo and Pete. How are you this morning?
Doing great, man. Welcome back to the program, by the way. Always nice to have you on here.
And always nice to participate.
2 years ago, we spoke to you about the Lake Nipissing Stakeholders Association and the plans to raise $175,000 to create 10 small walleye hatcheries up there. And you were having a fundraiser locally, and people were all gung-ho about it. Where is it today?
Well, our local M&R branch doesn't believe in restocking, so they've pretty much killed any forward momentum. We originally thought that we could harvest 300 million walleye eggs out of Lake Nipissing, and the concerns from the M&R, which were legitimate, that if we had a failure in a big hatchery like that, we'd lose them all. So we downsized to 20 million and said we'd do it in 10 small hatcheries so that if there was a catastrophic failure, you wouldn't lose all your eggs. And again, they turned us down for that. Now, you know, Oneida Lake in New York State is a quarter the size of Nipissing, and they harvest 300 million walleye eggs annually. And then the bulk of them are spread out in surrounding lakes. So the DNR believes in restocking. The problem is our MNR does not.
Well,
it's bizarre.
Well, the whole situation is bizarre to me up there. Peter and I were up in your neck of the woods last year doing a shoot, and we were fortunate enough to have a meeting with some M&R officials, and also, I believe, and I don't want to mention names or anything, but I believe she was a deputy minister.
She was up there.
And they came and had a lunch with us one day on the French River. And, of course, the conversation, as it always does, turns to fish stocks, and we started dialoguing with them about their plans and their philosophies. And I got to tell you something, Scott. After that little time we spent with them, I was put off with their whole concept of what good fish management should be. And I sympathize with all of you guys, all of you people in that area that are wrestling with this, because it's like a solid brick wall.
It doesn't make sense to us when we hear that kind of stuff, right? It's the opposite almost.
Tell us what's going on now, and what you guys are trying to do to bring that fishery back. Because right now, as it stands, the walleye fishery is closed. Am I correct? As far as
no, it's not closed.
Okay.
We've had the MNR has last year restricted the sports fishery to 2 walleye over 46 centimeters. That sounds great, but I mean, it's less than 3% of the population. The problem is the 46 below and smaller, we need to get those into the spawn. And do I believe in the science of that? Absolutely. The problem being, who's harvesting the 46 and below fish, right? The commercial fishery still harvests that fish. What we want to know is, are the 6-year-old females getting into the spawn? And if they're not, what's being done about it?
Yeah, it almost, Scott, if I could just interrupt, it almost seemed, to us anyways, it seemed like this was just an attack directly pointed at recreational fishermen and not the whole picture.
Well, that's how we see it. Now, we're willing to burden and you know, our share of the responsibility for, you know, harvest. But since 2000, the sports fishermen have been, the restrictions have gone up because we're the only ones that can be restricted. The MNR needs to look at conservation as the main way to manage a resource, not as a recovery method, right? So the only problem is you can't restrict half a fishery and expect to see results. And this is our problem. And so we wanted to increase restocking, and there's all kinds of evidence that suggests restocking works. If you look at the story of Red Lake in Minnesota, much like Nipissing, a little bit bigger, shallow, lots of oxygen, perfect walleye body, fish to zero, brought back to a full fishery again using large volume fry restocking. So, I mean, you got to look at the good examples out there, and you don't, when you're you got to look at best in class, and they're not looking at best in class. They're looking at the cost, I believe, and we were willing to burden that cost as well.
I wish I could agree with you, buddy, but I have to disagree. I don't think it has anything to do with costs. It's all politically motivated, and I'll tell you why. Because we're spending millions upon millions of dollars and man-hours trying to restock Atlantic salmon into the Great Lakes, which is a humongous failure, has been for the last 20 years. It's a cesspool for money. Yet they look at a viable program like yours up there that is very sustainable. It's already there.
It would have been fixed.
It would have been done. We would have had more walleye swimming around on Lake Nipissing than we could ever use up.
It'd be 6 fish limit. Take
Exactly.
We need to get rid
so it's not the money, buddy. This is politically motivated, and we've got to stop looking at conservation and wildlife through political eyes. It's got to stop. We can't impose rules on one sector only, and under the name of political correctness, and not have everybody participate.
It'd be like watching the hockey game last night, and one team has rules and the other doesn't.
Yeah.
There you go, guys.
Exactly.
You go at it and hack and slash but these guys, don't you do that. Yeah, so.
Amen, Pete. Well, I'm going to give you a wee bit of history here. 3 years ago, I was fishing, and the MNR Creel boat comes up to me, and then they say, in the conversation, they say that the walleye fishery might be closed on Nipissing. That's when we started the LNSA. And then their argument was, the MNR's argument was that the young walleye were growing so fast that they were being harvested before they were sexually mature. So our organization did some research, and we find DNR says, a study that shows when they're growing too fast, increase your stocking levels, it'll reduce their growth rate. So you think we'd win that argument. Well, all of a sudden the argument becomes the lake is too large. And I'm like, what happened to the first argument? So anyway, we do more research. We find big lakes like Red Lake in Minnesota, Lac La Biche in Alberta. I could go on and on. Success stories of big lakes restocked successfully. So then it comes down to genetic dilution. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You keep moving the goalposts. We can't win when you change the argument, right? So now genetic dilution, I'm saying, show me some data. Show me some evidence that any fishery was destroyed based on genetic dilution. Doesn't exist. How am I going to win that argument, right? Now, we've talked to biologists. I just laugh when you say that argument because we're taking the fish out of Nipissing, putting them back in Nipissing. They're saying, well, you're using the same fish over and over, and we're saying, well, you tag the fish. We won't use tag fish. It won't be the same fish as last year. Give us different places to harvest these fish for the spawn, keeping in mind that none of them die when we restock.
Scott, can I get you to hold that thought for a minute? I don't want to lose any of it, but I have to go into a quick break. So we'll be right back. Scott Nelson from Glen Echo Cottages, who is also on the Lake Nipissing Stakeholders Association chairman, actually. I was going to say on the board. We'll be right back from Fredericton. This is Outdoor Journal. More after this. Don't you dare go away. On the line with us, Scott Nelson, chairman for the Lake Nipissing Stakeholders Association, also happens to be owner of a fine establishment on Lake Nipissing, Glen Echo Cottages, or for more information, glenechocottages.com will get you there. But we're talking to him about the situation on Lake Nipissing, and in particular the walleye fishery and the fiasco, the mismanagement of that whole resource. And Scott, The reason
Yes, sir.
I wanted to bring you back is, and I'm as guilty as you are, as guilty as anybody else is in this situation. You know, I mentioned that I think it's politically motivated. I think the mismanagement is a problem that has absolutely nothing to do with money, dollars, or avail of resources. And it's all due to political correctness. And I just realized that in that last segment, you, myself, Peter, we're all guilty of it because we're not calling it the way it is. We're beating around the bush. The problem that you have on Lake Nipissing right now is that we have the angling community that represents, and I don't know whether figure is correct or not, but I believe represents about 15% of the harvest of walleye on that body of water.
15, you said, right?
15.
Yeah.
And that number is
they're the ones.
shrinking every year.
Okay, so and yet they're the ones who are taking 100% of the blame here, because they're the ones who are being cut back,
Penalized, you go.
penalized.
Right.
When the other sector, and you called it commercial fishing, I will call it native fishing, and I apologize if I offend anybody by that, but I have to start not being politically correct, and I have to start painting the picture correctly. The native fishery does not have to abide by the same rules and regulations as the rest of the user group, and in particular the angling community. And that is the problem here.
That's discrimination.
That's
We are being
discrimination.
discriminated against.
And we need to start looking at it that way.
Well,
Go
you're
ahead,
exactly right. The only problem is, you know, when the M&R looks at the Supreme Court rulings, they forget that conservation is the number one thing.
Right.
So they go to sustenance and then the right for First Nations to commercially fish. But if they manage through conservation, in the long run, we're all going to win. If they maintain their current management regime, we're all going to lose. You know, First Nations or us. You know, so I don't understand the concept at all.
Nor does anybody else.
That's a great way he put it. Just like
Yeah.
the way he put that. We're all going to lose.
Yeah.
Because they're losing. They're gaining to lose right now. What
Yeah.
they're doing.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
The natives. So
And I don't know what's motivating the First Nations people with this whole thing, but God, I hope we can start clearing some of the clouds away from this and see.
Well, one thing that most people aren't aware of is there's an undertow in the First Nation community up here that's saying stop gill netting. Gill netting is killing the lake, and and even to the chief this year, Chief Mariana Cucci had said, you know, no more spearing during the spawn. There's a moratorium. No more gill netting during the spawn. So, although small, there is some direction to hope, right? And the reality is we need to get away from gill nets. They indiscriminately kill fish, right? And we need to find an alternative way to make money for First Nations on the resource that doesn't destroy the resource. Right.
What can we do? How do we take this action? What's got to be done next?
Well, you know, we need to focus our attention at this point, in our opinion, on restocking only to give us the time, because you know nothing goes quick in the government, only to give us the time and maintain strong year classes until we resolve the problem. And it might be above my pay grade, but, you know, it certainly impacts a huge industry up here. And, you know, I was in manufacturing before I got into the sports fishing, and I saw the demise of it. And I can tell you, it's not just Lake Nipissing that's going to suffer. This industry is going to go down unless the sports fishermen get off the couch and stand up for themselves, you know, because we need to, it's, you know, everybody moans and complains, but we need to start signing petitions. We need to show the politicians that we are a voice, and a big voice, because we are a big voice. We just don't collectively vote together.
Yeah, it's the elephant in the room.
It's
It's the elephant in the room, and we have to all start saying, no, let's talk about the real facts. And I think the anglers could do it. We just need to stand up and start. It could start tomorrow, hopefully.
Well, recently there was a meeting in the Federation of Northern Municipalities, and the Minister of Natural Resources goes to this meeting, and he knew what was going on in Nipissing. So obviously the North Bay M&R branch has shared the information with them. Well, he tells them that the reason why they've added restrictions onto our stocking was because we harvested more than the 2 million eggs we were allotted. And quite frankly, it's not true, and it's insulting to all the guys and gals that work with us and spend all the time and energy for no other reason than to help the lake. And I mean, I can't imagine calling a volunteer group thieves or liars, right? And publicly, right? So we're
absolutely.
We're expecting an apology from the minister because we have affidavits from everybody. You know, Angelo, it's like you try hard to do something for the community, and this is we're getting bullied.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear, my friend.
It's not just us. I talked to the other hatcheries. Magneto One. I talked to the boys up in north of us here. Sudbury's been asked to gather more walleye eggs and do more restocking.
Yeah, because you tell me that's not political, man. That's just that's crap. It's crap. Listen, I've got to run, my friend. You've got our support. Anytime you need to reach out to us, anytime we can do anything at all to shed some light on this situation, you need but call, and we'll do that. Is there a website or someplace that...
That's what I wanted. One thing I want. We're doing an online petition. If your callers go to www.lnsa.net, there's a petition on there. Please stand up, sign that petition, and we get enough names on there. Then you know what it's like. If it's political, then volume is going to be the changing factor.
Hey, listen, we're going to be talking to the Minister of Tourism here in New Brunswick in a few minutes. Maybe we can see if he can call his colleagues back home and put some pressure on the Ontario boys.
The more the merrier.
All right, my friend. Listen, thanks once again, Scott. Really appreciate it. By the way, if I haven't mentioned it, which I have, I'll just mention it again. Scott owns a wonderful operation called Glen Echo Cottages on Lake Nipissing. Check it out. Great place to spend a weekend or a week with friends and family. Thank you, buddy.
Great show, guys. Keep up the fight.
Thanks, man. Scott Nelson, chairman with the Lake Nipissing Stakeholders Association. And I got to tell you, guys listening, anybody listening to this that thinks we're just putting on a show here, you're dead wrong. We're so concerned about that fishery because it was once the bastion for walleye.
The best in the province. Maybe in the country.
Maybe in the country. Yeah. And it's just criminal. Pete and I spend a lot of time up there. It's just criminal what's happening. It's just criminal. It's like everybody's got their heads stuck in the sand and don't want to call it the way it should be called.
And if you are an angler, if you've ever fished Lake Nipissing or you're going to, you are being discriminated against.
Yes.
Think about that right there.
That's discrimination at its best. Without question. Or worse, I guess.